You're listening to C101.5 FM, The Hawk, from Mohawk College in Hamilton, Ontario. Hamilton's alternative.
It's been a dream come true to make my Broadway debut this season in a new musical comedy with a book by Woody Allen, big laughs, colorful characters, and the songs that made the 20s roar. I portray an aspiring young playwright who's forced to cast a mobster's talentless girlfriend in my play to get it produced, something that has never happened in the history of the theater. Now, please welcome Tony nominee Nick Cordero and the company of Bullets Over Broadway.
If I dislike my lover and leave her for another, tain't nobody's business if I do. Well, I won't call no copper if I'm beat up by my papa. Tain't nobody's business if I do. After all, the way to do is do just as you please, regardless of their talking. Oftentimes the ones that talk will get down on their knees and beg your pardon for their squawking. Church on Sunday, burn down my school on Monday. Ain't nobody's business. Ain't nobody's stinking business. If I do.
Welcome. I'm your host, Lyla Miklos. You are listening to a special 2-hour edition of Center Stage on 101.5 FM The Hawk in celebration of Hamilton's own Broadway superstar, Nick Cordero. Nick tragically passed away from complications due to COVID-19 on Sunday, July 5th, 2020, after a 3-month battle with the disease. People across the planet followed his coronavirus journey via his wife Amanda Klut's very personal and always positive Instagram posts. At the top of the show, we heard his co-star and friend Zach Braff introduce Nick Cordero and the company of Bullets Over Broadway at the 2014 Tony Awards. Before Nick went on to be a Tony Award-nominated actor, he was a beloved member of Hamilton's theater arts community. Throughout this special, you will listen to conversations with those who knew him, worked with him, and loved him, from Westdale Secondary School, New Faces, Theatre Aquarius Summer School, and Hamilton Theatre Inc. And of course, we will enjoy his music and his beautiful voice. Our first conversation is with a group who first got to know Nick Cordero when he was a student at Westdale Secondary School.
You're listening to Center Stage, a celebration of musicals from both the stage and screen. I'm your host, Lyla Miklos, and today's show is dedicated to Nick Cordero, and we've been reaching out to the many theater communities he's been a part of in Hamilton, Ontario. And one of those theater communities was led by David Dayler, as both the drama teacher at Westdale Secondary School and the artistic director of New Faces. On the line with me right now is David Dayler from Ancaster, and also some of the alumni from his theater programs are on the line with me as well. I have Dave Shuttleworth from Hamilton, and I also have Carrie Beale, who's talking to me from Hamilton as well, and Dwayne Gordon, who's talking to me from Victoria, BC. David, could you talk to us about your first impressions of Nick Cordero, and what was he like as a student that first entered your classroom?
Well, it's interesting. He started in grade 9, so he's come to us as a newbie. We already had New Faces established at that point, and we were working with older kids, university students, college students, all looking to make a career in the arts. And Nick was full of enthusiasm. And when we started to work on a show that Josh Levy and I were creating around violence against women, it was called Black and Blue, and Dave was in it as well, and the two Levy boys and Matthew. And he was full of energy. He was this gangly, energetic young guy who had a great voice. And so it was funny because it was out of the Westdale program that I'd also find a lot of the supporting players that we'd use in the New Faces shows, the younger kids that would fill the company roles, the ensemble roles, and the community and the university kids would have the leading roles. So that was just an energy that Nick brought to it. So we brought him into a couple of the shows at Hamilton Place. He ended up, I think, doing 5 or 6 of them. But he held his own with every one of those university performers. And he was in grade 9, 10, 11, and 12 when we were doing those shows. And I remember one review, and he always got good reviews, but one review said that he had a magnetic stage personality. And that was from Hugh Fraser, who didn't give out great reviews, enthusiastic reviews easily. You had to really earn them. But there was something about the magnetism of Nick that was always there. And I was catching up with some of the kids that were in the program. Shelley Cass was one of them. She was his dance partner in Rhapsody in Blue. And she said, for such a young man, he was an old soul. He had intuition and the instincts of a seasoned performer, even as a young kid. He wasn't without the naivety of a young performer, but he had great instincts. He was so likable with all of the performers. Everybody enjoyed working with him because he was focused, he was energetic, and he was giving.
Dave Shuttleworth, you were in productions with him both at Westdale and in New Faces. What was it like to be his co-star on stage?
In a word, it was kind of daunting. He was so immensely talented. It was interesting. The Black and Blue was the first show we were in. He was in grade 9 and I was in grade 11. And he was your typical 14-year-old kid. He was really tall and long and lanky and had a big smile. His teeth were too big for his face, but he put it out there. He put it out there because he knew he was sort of with a bunch of older kids and didn't know if you'd like it or not, but he just put it out there to see, whereas I think a lot of us were, kind of reserved. So he was an extremely talented kid. I think the consensus was that we all recognized that, even though he was a typical, dumb teenager, like the rest of us, he thought that, I'm going to try this and see if it goes over. And that's what he did. And the funny thing is, I always remember David Dayler. Every year he would say, "Oh my God, these grade 9s get worse and worse every year." And Nick was that one exception. Nick was the one exception.
Dwayne, you also had the pleasure of working with Nick on stage in both the Westdale Players and New Faces. What were your impressions of him?
Well, David pretty much hit it on the head. He just had a ton of energy. After my post-Nick years, I always remembered Nick as just having a tremendous amount of energy and just being larger than life. And he was sitting way above his years in theatrical terms. He was like an old soul when we were on the stage. I think we did, I'm not sure which came first, the Blitz Hits Rhapsody for 2 or the Free to Be. I just remember, I think that may have been the first show at Hamilton Place that I did with Nick. And I was one of the older students that David was talking about. I think he was in grade 9 or 10, Nick, at the time. But you would never know it. He just held his own, and every role, every sketch he took within that Free to Be show, you were engrossed in what he was able to give and what he was able to portray. I remember that one of the sketches, favorite ones that I remember of Nick, was the baby sketch, and he would be near the top of the show, and we had the audience because he was Nick and Aaron. They were out there in their diapers and sucking their thumbs and doing this baby sketch that, you know, it was just so endearing. And so he was able to capture just the essence of that sketch, and just his portrayal was captivating. You know, we had the audience for the rest of the show because Nick set us up so well. Everything Nick did was just in awe.
Carrie, you worked with Nick also at Westdale High School, and you did a Sears Drama Festival show with him, and your siblings went to school with him too. Can you share some of your memories of your time with him at Westdale Secondary School?
Just like Dwayne said, and even Dave, that's exactly what Nick was. He was, you know, this guy who you almost couldn't believe that he was younger. And I remember being in the auditorium and, you know, having to keep thinking like, you know, there I was in OAC and trying to remember the fact that he wasn't our age, but he always seemed like it. We spent, like, I remember lunches in there even before we even rehearsed. We got together a lot in the auditorium and, you know, ate lunch and just hung out and sang, palled around. And that was like, those were the fond memories. That was a lot of fun. I'm glad to have those memories. My sister's memory of him was he could walk down the hall and know if you were having a bad day. And what he would do is walk up to you and do a silly dance or start singing away, and he wouldn't stop until he cheer you up. Everyone has these same memories of him, that he was the one that, you know, if you felt alone, he would come over and make sure you didn't anymore. If you were being bullied, he would make sure the bullies weren't bullying you anymore, you know, turn things around, make sure the bullies felt like it was their idea, you know, stuff like that. These were the stories that were coming out. He was always the good guy. This was the guy that it shouldn't have happened to.
Carrie just reminded me of Nick trying to cheer people up, and I will say a couple times he did with me as well. And he had, to this date, the best Ace Ventura impression that no. It had just come out around that time, and everybody's tried to copy it, but Nick's was spot on. He nailed it.
We all went out after we had a show at Hamilton Place at Free to Be, and then as soon as the curtain went down, we all went out to see it at Jackson Square.
That's right. That's right. And he picked up on it, and I guess he knew it was going to be big, and he nailed that impression. Just amazing.
You know how difficult Closer Than Ever is as a musical.
Mm-hmm.
And I had Christy O'Coin, Sherry Dunn, Agnes Casa, and Andy Toth, all involved in that show. And Nick was the other male that we brought into it. Now, he was a good, I think, 5 or 6 years younger than all of them.
Yep.
And he had that song, If I Sing, the song about the father and how the father imparts music to him and the love of music. And he brought the audience to tears every night. And that's a moment that stuck with me, just because Nick lost his dad, just over a year ago, or a little more than a year ago. Yeah. And when I think back to that now, when he performed that, he was in high school, and yet he still had the sensitivity to draw out those emotions and make them live and breathe on the stage. And that's, I think, what we see and we saw in the performances that he had on Broadway. For heaven's sakes, he was a star on Broadway. And we had the good fortune to see those moments in the early days when we had him as a student.
And David, as his teacher, seeing a student of yours make it onto a Broadway stage and Tony nominations, how does that feel?
Oh, it's incredible. But, you know, I swear it was something in the water at Westdale. It wasn't me. We've had 3 Broadway performers out of that cohort. We've had 3 filmmakers. We've got artists come. There was something about that time. We were fortunate enough. I was in the position that we could get grants and funding to hire these kids. And so we could provide the opportunities. Tom Burrows was instrumental in it at Hamilton Place, giving them the opportunity to experience what it's like to work in professional theater. And they were working, although they weren't professionals, They were working in a professional situation under professional conditions, and that really grounded them. Nick and Casey are case in point. Both of them they're incredible stars in the firmament of the theatrical community, and we're lucky to have had them for a little bit of time with us. And it's just heartbreaking that we've lost Nick at this point. But boy, to share those moments and to think about the times we did have is such a joy.
What do you think you're going to miss most about Nick?
I mean, when we all graduated, we all sort of went our separate ways. I didn't really stick around in the theater vein, a couple of shows with David there. But we always sort of caught up, whether it was saying hi on Facebook being what it is, saying hi on your birthday and stuff. And he was always there with a right comment at the right time. So a couple of years, actually about a year and a half ago, I was up in Ottawa and I went and had coffee with Jeremy Binns, or Jeremy Fisher, who was my best friend. He was my best friend growing up and lived a couple of blocks from where Nick grew up. So Jeremy and I took a selfie at Starbucks and posted it. And Nick was immediate posting. He said, when I think of one of you, I think of both of you.
Yeah.
And I thought it was one of the nicest things to say. Honestly, I have two fantastic memories of Nick, and I can just leave it with this. I was there when Nick ordered his first beer. And David, you're not going to want to hear this because he was only 14 years old at the time.
I remember that.
We were at the Sears.
I wasn't there.
No, you weren't. You weren't. We were at Sears in North Bay. And of course, what do? You find a Chinese restaurant, right? So we went to a Chinese restaurant. We all ordered beers, and we all ordered either Canadian or a blue. And Nick pipes up and says, "Yeah, can I have one too?" And they gave him one, and I think it took him forever to drink it, but I was there for that. And the other was, and David, I don't know if you've blocked this from your memory, but it took place in the shower of the dressing room at Hamilton Place during the production of Free to Be. I was having a quick shower before our second show. I believe it was on the Saturday night, and I was just done washing my hair, and I opened my eyes, and standing in front of me in the shower stall is Nick Cordero with a Polaroid camera.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Dwayne, you're remembering this now. So I thought,
I remember.
What am I going to do? So I just opened my arms and smiled and let him take the picture. And he went down. He was more horrified than I was because he went downstairs and everyone, I believe it was Kristen Peace and Hillary, who was her name? Anyway, they were all gathered around. What happened? What happened? And Nick said, he posed for me. and
I could see
and that picture made the rounds, and it even popped up when I was running for city council back in 2006, just on a personal basis. But yeah, so those are, if I have two memories that stick out from Nick, those are them.
And it's funny that everybody that you talk to talks about how Nick was caring. There was a wonderful story about this actor in New York that he looked after from Bronx Tale and that. And 3 years ago, I had a stroke, and I was in the hospital. And one of the first people that contacted me was Nick, who was in New York. And his comment on Facebook was, "If there's anything you need, let me know." And I said, "Wow, this is a performer on Broadway. Why does he have time to do that?" But Nick always did that, and you'll hear that from other people. He always had time for everybody.
Oh, that's beautiful, David. Oh. Dwayne, what are you going to miss most about Nick?
As Dave was saying, we kind of drifted apart after those mid-'90s mayhem and the Polaroid. You just want to wipe that stuff out of your memory. But, New Faces, it was a special time in my life and many others that David, created an avenue or a gateway to really explore becoming professional performers. You knew when Nick was in New Faces, everybody in the cast, everybody in the production team, we all knew Nick was going places. It was just a matter of time. We were all proven right when he made it on Broadway. I think I'm going to miss seeing his first Tony win, quite honestly. I was really looking forward to cheering him on and watching that acceptance speech. And I feel we've been robbed of that.
I hear you, Dwayne. I hear you. Carrie, you've been following Nick's journey ever since COVID-19 ravaged his body on social media. I wanted to give some final thoughts to you about how you're feeling about everything now and where we're at with things and what's going to stay with you most about Nick.
I'm actually staying in contact with Amanda and Nick's, we don't even say sister-in-law, Nick's sister, Anna. Out of this, I've been blessed to make 2 new friends. I always knew when days were bad, which was hard. So when things were quiet, and actually, unfortunately, I knew when it was bad. So I should have known when Alex messaged me, because that last couple days, when Amanda let us know that Anna was going to go live with us instead. And she let us know it was because Amanda couldn't leave Nick's room to go live. Unfortunately, the day before, Amanda had gone live from his room, so I knew it was bad. So that was hard. So it was then just kind of waiting to hear if hopefully it got better or not, but then it was too quiet. So then it was just waiting to unfortunately hear. So that was disappointing, but I'm glad to kind of keep in contact with both of them and just, see how things go. It was kind of nice to be there in some way for those days. They were a tough 95 days, but it was nice when there were good days. So, and I was so happy when Leslie made it there, and I know I saw Amanda there and his brother there. I was glad to see that his family made it out there when they did. So, and that's actually how I feel like he fought long enough to make sure that he could spend time with them. So that was comforting, that he was able to spend some time with them. He will be missed.
He will be. He is. Dave, Dwayne, Carrie, is there any final thoughts any of you have that you'd like to share with our listeners about Nick and what you're going to remember and miss about him?
I think it's pretty well been said. I think that he was a bold, brave, loving young man who made a mark, and it will be a mark that none of us will ever forget. It's a mark that, sadly, his young son is only going to know from the memories he hears from others. But I have the sense that Amanda and his mom is such a strong, wonderful person. They won't let his memory fade away. Elvis will know about his dad and all of the great things. And I think they'll have a record of all of this, of everyone's memories. And even today I was in a grocery store and there was People magazine with Nick on the cover. And I thought, oh my God, who would have ever thought? And why do we have to have it this way?
Yeah.
But as sad as it is, I think we're all richer because we knew him.
David Dayler, Dave Shuttleworth, Dwayne Gordon, and Carrie Beale, thank you so much for sharing your memories of Nick and your time with him at Westdale and with New Faces. I appreciate all of you coming together. I wish you
and Lyla, thank you for doing this. Thank you.
Yes,
thank you, Lyla.
Absolutely.
You're very welcome, and it's my pleasure and my honor to reunite theater community peeps. All of you stay safe and keep well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Dreamed I'd find someone, but that was just some fantasy. I'd meet a girl and she'd up and run. Love wanted no part of me. Then I met you, beautiful you, a true scientific breakthrough. Look deep
spend my life in the dark, stuck in a long, lonely night. You came along and lit a spark. Now finally I see the light. All 'cause of you, beautiful you, a man who's too good to be true. I see deep inside, you have nothing to hide. I know who you are, you're my shining star. You make my heart beat with nuclear heat. Now don't be scared of my hot toxic love. When you think of it, we're a perfect fit. We're both a little offbeat. I'm what you'd call blind. I'm more Frankenstein, yet somehow you make me complete. Look deep inside, I have nothing to hide. You'll see the real me. I'm yours honestly. You make me combust with chemical lust. Now don't be scared of my hot toxic look deep inside. I have nothing to hide. You'll see the real me. I'm yours honestly. You make me combust with chemical lust. Now don't be scared of my hot toxic love. My hot toxic
You're listening to The Hawk, 101.5 FM, broadcasting across Hamilton from the edge of the Niagara Escarpment.
30-second life story.
30 seconds on the clock. Tell me your life story. Don't leave out the awesome parts. Starting now.
Born in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Started performing when I was about 14. Went to Ryerson University at 18 in the acting program. Left that program to be in a rock band. Did that for 4 years. Did cruise ships for 2 years to save money to move to New York, which I did in 2007, and I've been here ever since.
You've got 5 seconds left.
Killing it.
You are listening to a special 2-hour edition of Center Stage in celebration of Nick Cordero on 101.5 FM The Hawk. I'm your host, Lyla Miklos. We just heard Nick Cordero and Sara Chase sing Hot Toxic Love from the original cast recording of The Toxic Avenger, which was then followed by a segment from an interview Nick Cordero did with Susan Blackwell. Throughout this special, we are going to have conversations with those who knew and worked with Nick Cordero in Hamilton's theater arts community. Our next conversation is with fellow alumni of Theatre Aquarius's summer school program, which Nick Cordero was a graduate of.
You're listening to Center Stage, a celebration of musicals from both the stage and screen. I'm your host, Lyla Miklos, on 101.5 FM The Hawk. Tonight's show is in celebration of Nick Cordero and his many connections with Hamilton's theater community and all the different groups he was a part of. And the group I have on the phone with me now, we're all a part of the Theatre Aquarius summer school program that was started by Lou and Pauline Zamprogna. And on the phone with me right now from Hamilton is Amanda Zamprogna. Hello, Amanda.
Hi, Lyla.
And Amanda was in the productions of Chess and Evita that the summer school program put on. Also on the phone with me is Sara Mintz from Toronto. Hello, Sara.
Hi, Lyla. Good to speak to you.
Good to speak with you as well. And Sara was in the production of Chess put on by Aquarius. And on the phone with me from Toronto as well is Kelly Lovatt, who was also in Chess. Hello, Kelly.
Hi, Lyla. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. And Kathy Zaborsky, who's calling me from Calgary, was in Chess with Nick at Theatre Aquarius. And also the two of us go in My Favorite Year with Hamilton Theatre Inc. with Nick as well. Hello, Kathy.
Hi, Lyla. Great to hear your voice.
Great to hear you too. This has been a really sad time for us in the theater community because Nick was one of our own and he was our Broadway superstar who we all got to say, hey, we worked with you and we're proud of you and this is amazing. Amanda, this is the program that your parents launched and we were all a part of together as kids, and you've continued the legacy of your parents' program by continuing on with the Zamp Arts program. And continuing that tradition of launching a big musical in the summer with teens and youth. When you think about Nick and your time with Nick at the Theatre Aquarius Summer School, what do you remember the most?
Nick is a huge guy, and even though he was, he was 15 maybe when he first came to the program and did chess, and he did play the role of the arbiter, which kind of controls the game with the chess matches that were happening in the show and stuff. Again, to be 15 in this program and having a role that kind of controls the show is quite something, and then I did Evita with him the following year, and even though he was only a year older, I remember him just coming back and being so much more mature, and again, he played Kay, this role that just kind of controls the show. He was always just such a force. He was just such an awesome guy, and he was just so talented, and so strong up there.
Sara, what do you remember most about your time with Nick at Theatre Aquarius Summer School?
Well, interestingly, it's actually not my time at Aquarius that I remember. I was in the program for a number of years, and then Chess was my last show. But I came back the next year to watch that production of Evita. And I'll tell you, Lyla, that seeing Nick playing Che, even as young as he was, as Amanda said, he was like 15 or 16, and along with Kristen Peace, who played Evita, the two of them together, so young, but you could see the talent. You could see the star power, and you just knew that this high school guy, this very tall, big smile, happy high school guy was going to be a huge star. His talent was obvious even at that young age. It was incredible to watch.
Kathy, when you're thinking about your time with Nick in the show, what do you remember the most?
Well, during Theatre Aquarius times, it's high school times, and I just remember being so shy, and it was hard to, make new friends and talk to people, but he was always so just easy to talk to and so kind, even at that age of being an awkward teenager, that we all were. And I remember him kind of like Sara. It was after Theatre Aquarius where I was in my late 20s and he was already doing great stuff. I happened to be taking the GO bus from Hamilton to Toronto one day and we were on the same bus and we just hung out together talking. Bus ride was like 2 minutes long because, he was just so funny and so kind. And then after that, he was in the show The Toxic Avenger on Off-Broadway and initiated this role. And then I was doing the premiere in Calgary of that show. And he just wrote these beautiful comments on my Facebook about it. And it just lifted me up so much. You can tell someone's really kind when their comments on Facebook make you really, really happy, And he was that kind of guy. Yeah. So nothing but great memories.
Oh, that's wonderful. And Kelly, what do you remember about your time with Nick at theater school?
I remember spending a lot of time on stage right with Nick. And we spent a lot of time giggling and probably having Lou shoot us that Lou look that he gives us. And you are doing something bad. And I remember, I think I would have been 18 and he was 15, thinking, who is this tall, gangly puppy that needs his hands and his feet were so big. You knew he needed to grow into them. But that smile, holy moly, did that thing that smile hit the back of that theater wall and bounced right back at you. And I remember, I don't know if you guys remember, his hair was sort of long into his shoulders, and he kept tucking it behind his ears all the time. There was just such a sweetness and such a kind person, and I think that is the thing I will remember most about him, is that the kindness, it was ethereal, and it shone from him out of every possible area. And I think that we all knew even then, when we watched him perform, that there was something special about him. Not just how he carried himself on stage, but I think a lot is to be said about how a person carries themselves off stage. And I think that echoes what Kathy said, like what he puts out there, out for people. That was Nick.
Now, Amanda, you and your family kept in touch with Nick while his career rose and rose and rose. I know that you went to go see him on stage in New York. Can you share some of those experiences with us?
Nick was a busy guy, for sure. As far as keeping in touch with them, it was definitely off and on. But when you know somebody and they're on Broadway, you definitely want to go and support them and see them. And so, my dad went down, he saw him, I think, in most of the shows. I don't know. I can't remember if my dad saw Toxic Avenger or not, but he definitely saw Waitress and Bronx Tale and Bullet. And we had gone down. I know I posted that picture of us on all of my social media pages. But
so beautiful, Amanda.
It's just such a great photo. And, I remember taking that photo when we were in the bar next to the Maker Theater upstairs after the show, because I guess the cast, that wasn't any particular night of the show, but it was just the night that we happened to be there. And I remember meeting Amanda, and I remember meeting Zach Braff, and I was a little starstruck by that, But it was just so great. And what I love about that photo too is that, we're all just beaming, and we were just so proud of Nick. And I pulled that photo off of his Instagram, and the fact that even he posted on there that he was, I felt like he was happy to have us there too, and I just feel fortunate that we were there. We were able to see him, and like everyone says, he's just such a warm, loving guy, and never was too busy to have friends come and visit him. Never was too popular and too big for us to come and see him and have time for us. It was so awesome. And we also went down for a Bronx Tale too, and he took us up on stage and showed us around, and we met Chad, Tom, and Carrie, and we went down with a few friends and stuff. And again, same thing, he just always had time for his friends, always had time for the people from back home,
Sara, if there was something that you were going to miss most about Nick, what would it be?
Obviously the talent, but really the kindness, the gentle kindness of his being. And you can see from what we're saying, I don't want to age any of us, but 20 plus years, and we all remember him and have great memories. The talent, obviously, but the personalities, the good person, the kind man. I said the smile, and Kelly also said that, the smile, it's just a megawatt smile and a megawatt heart to go with it.
Yeah. Kathy, how about you? What are you going to miss the most?
I just think the world needs more people like that. We don't want to lose people like that. We need people like that, and especially now. Yeah, I'm just going to miss one of the good people.
And Kelly?
I'm just going to miss where he could have gone. There was so much more that he could do. I know I've read a few things where he's put his wings back on, but I agree. I think we needed him here. I think his wife, his beautiful little boy. Yeah, I just would have loved to have seen where Nick could go. There was no obstacle that stopped him, and I think that there was more.
Amanda, we seem to have an embarrassment of riches in Hamilton when it comes to theater artists making it in the biz and leaving a legacy behind, and all of us getting to be a part of that. How do you feel about being a part of the impact that Nick had on the world?
Well, I feel privileged to have, not me personally, but my dad, my family, I feel very privileged to have been a part of it. There's many people in Hamilton, new faces, David Dayler, HDI, so many people he's touched the lives of, and I feel just privileged to be a part of it, and I feel honored to have known him. And I just wish that we could hang out some more, and I wish my ultimate dream is that we could have a big party with all the people from Theatre Aquarius over the last 5 years.
That's amazing.
Man, if we ever did get to do that, I just wish Nick could have been there, but
yeah. Oh.
Well, Sara, Amanda, Kathy, and Kelly, thank you so much for sharing your memories and stories about Nick with our listeners. I really appreciate it. And I've been following Zach Braff on social media, and he posted a picture today of Nick with his son, and all it said was, wear a mask.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. Yeah. What a tragedy.
Thanks, Lyla.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lyla.
You're very welcome.
There's a kind of a girl who can send your heart whirling away. But those are the kind you don't happen to find every day. You'll meet smart ones and tough ones, just good enough ones. They're fine, kid, go out there, enjoy. But in all of your life, you get only 3 shots at the real McCoy. And this one could be one of the great ones. This one could be one of the ones you won't forget. If the stars in her eyes make your confidence rise like a rocket that's ready to blow, then she might be one of your great ones. Don't let her go. Now you know instantly when one of your 3 comes along, 'cause she gazes at you and it's like you can do nothing wrong. All the sweet ones, the slight ones, the close but not quite ones, with them you just get what you see. But the great ones, kid, what they're showing you is the man you could be. And this girl could be one of the great ones. This one could be one of the ones on who you bet. Do you fly off the rails with the wind in your sails? Whenever she sends you a glance, then she might be one of your great ones. Don't blow your chance. Yeah, this one could be one of the great ones. Yeah, this one could be one of the ones you won't regret. If she's smiling at you like she knows you'll come through and makes you believe it somehow, then kid, you found one of those great ones. Go to her now. Go to her now. Kid, go to her now. Yeah, this one could be one of those great ones. This one could be one of the ones you won't regret. Let your 3 slip away, and you'll wonder one day if maybe, if only, but oh, you don't forget one of your great ones. Trust me, I know. Trust me, I know.
Hi Lyla, it's C.A. Smith reaching out from London, UK. And although I can't be in on your discussion about our dear friend Nick, I thought I would share one of my favorite Nick stories that we spoke about when I last saw him when he was there in England. We'd done Evita that summer. It was around 98 and he played Che, so he had long hair. He had gorgeous hair anyway, you know, long curly brown hair and kind of a beard, the kind of beard that we could grow at that age anyway. I hadn't seen him for a week or two, and then one weekend I'm walking around and saw Nick walking towards me. His walk was unmistakable, and of course he was so tall. I knew it was him, but he had no hair. He'd shaved his head. But I had shaved my head as well. Went up to each other, hugged, shook hands, whatever it was. And he says to me, dude, what happened to all your hair? And I said, what happened to all my hair? What happened to your hair? And he's like, I saw Train Spotting this week, and after watching it, I just thought it'd be a good idea to shave my head. And I said, oh my God, the same thing happened to me. I don't know how wise a decision that was. Anyway, we kept in touch over the years, and the one really remarkable thing about the last time I saw him here in London, he came over for dinner, and whenever any of our friends came up, which we discussed it at length as you'd imagine, he had nothing but positive things to say about every single person that came up. And in spite of his own successes that he'd had, which were so many, it's incredible how well he did, he really wanted to talk about how great everyone else is doing. I'm sure a few other people had that experience. Sending lots of love to you. All right, take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
You're listening to the Hawk 101.5 FM in Hamilton, Ontario.
Hello, I'm Lyla Miklos, and you are listening to a special 2-hour edition of Center Stage on 101.5 FM The Hawk in celebration of Nick Cordero. We just heard Nick Cordero sing one of the great ones from the original Broadway cast recording of A Bronx Tale, followed by a special message from his friend C.A. Smith. Hamiltonians might remember C.A. back from his independent music days as Mayor McCaw, and perhaps even more infamously when he ran for mayor of the city of Hamilton. Nick was a well-loved member of Hamilton's theater arts community. He died earlier this month from complications due to COVID-19. Before he became a star on Broadway, he was already a star on the many stages of Hamilton, Ontario. The next conversation we are going to have is with members of Hamilton Theatre Inc. HTI is a community theater group who has been producing musicals since 1956. HTI's marquee has also been changed to read, One of the Greats. Rest in peace, Nick Cordero, 1978 to 2020. The theater artists that are a part of our next conversation were all a part of the casts and crews of the shows that Nick starred in with HTI in the mid-1990s.
You're listening to Center Stage, a celebration of musicals from both the stage and screen. I'm your host, Lyla Miklos on 101.5 The Hawk. On our show today, we are celebrating Nick Cordero, one of Hamilton's own, and we have been speaking with people who Nick knew and worked with in Hamilton's theater community. And this group I have with me are all from Hamilton Theatre Inc., or HTI, and we're all in shows with Nick. Those shows were Boys from Syracuse in the fall of 1993, Meet Me in St. Louis in the spring of 1994, and My Favorite Year in the fall of 1994. All of the people on this call are people that worked with him on those shows. So I'm going to introduce you one by one. First of all, we have Tina Traini calling us from Ottawa, Ontario. Hello, Tina.
Hey, Lyla.
And then we have Christine Bering calling us from Caister Centre, Ontario. Hello, Christine.
Good evening, Lyla.
And then we have Brian Gedcke calling us from Hamilton, Ontario. Hello, Brian.
Hello.
And then Selena Jones calling us from Burlington, Ontario.
Hey, Lyla.
And then we have Linda Yamamoto calling us from Burlington, Ontario. Hello, Linda.
Hello.
And we have Dean Hollin calling us from Collingwood, Ontario. Hello, Dean.
Hello, Lyla.
And then we have Angela Burley calling us from Hamilton, Ontario. Hello, Angela.
Hi, Lyla, and hi, everyone else.
And last but certainly not least, calling us all the way from Oceanside, California, we have Regina Darling. Hello, Regina.
Hi, Lyla.
It's sad that this is what has brought us together, but I've been having some wonderful and beautiful conversations with people who knew and worked with Nick in Hamilton on stage. It's been great sharing these stories with everybody. Tina, I'll start with you. What are some of your memories of working with Nick in the productions at HTI?
I was the person who dragged Nick to HTI. So I remember being really nervous when we first started if he was going to have fun. And I remember looking over at him, just chatting it up with a bunch of people. And just, you knew right away that he was meant to be in a family, like a theater family at HTI. The other thing I remember is one show, and I think it was My Favorite Year, the boys' dressing room was a mess. And apparently my mom went into the dressing room. She was one of the costume ladies and just laid in on them and picked up some pants and showed them how to fold the pants. And he said to me in 2017, I still fold my pants the way your mom taught me to fold pants. it was never too big a star to fold his pants the way my mom told him to.
Yay, Linda.
Christine, what's a memory of working with Nick on stage at HTI that's staying with you today?
Funny thing is, I remember very little about him on stage. It is the backstage shenanigans that I remember. He was never in the boys' dressing room. I'm surprised he saw your mom teach him how to fold pants, because he was always in our dressing room. And that was fun. We wanted him there. We couldn't get enough of that guy. He was so hilarious. Anything to make us laugh. And he'd laugh at what we did too, which of course we loved. And I felt so much older than him because I had 6 years older than him. So I was always like, this is a very young boy here. You know, I got to be careful here. But he was so hilarious. We loved him, right, girls? Tina, Regina, we couldn't help it.
Absolutely.
And, you know, he's a couple of the things he used to do. We remember the fresher pepper. He used to do that imitation at the parties. He'd come around and go, a fresher pepper. Remember that? The insane in the membrane. Do you remember that? Membrane. I mean, we just wanted him to be around us. We just had so much fun. He was just such a good friend.
Brian, how about you? What do you remember the most of your time with Nick Cordero at HTI?
Well, the memory I always have of Nick, I wasn't in Meet Me in St. Louis. I worked backstage. But I remember there was the big trolley number. And everyone's on the trolley, and there's 5 or 6 of us behind the trolley pushing it like crazy. Tina's dad, and all these guys pushing the crazy. But then Nick Cordero standing in the front of it, sort of just holding on with one arm, walking sideways, making a face like, look at me, I'm pulling this whole thing by myself, and my smile is so happy. Look at me go. And it's just the most hilarious thing I've ever seen. That great smile on his face and that just casual way. A 15-year-old boy was doing this. It was hilarious.
Thank you, Brian. Selena, how about you? What sticks in your mind when you think back to your time at HTI on stage with Nick Cordero?
In Boys from Syracuse, we had a scene where 2 of the dancers had to do a character switch, and there was 3 guys standing in front of essentially a curtain, and they had to do a blind throw. And they had the dancer, essentially they were holding her horizontally, they had to check her over their heads, over the curtains, and 3 guys behind the curtains would catch her, and then another dancer would run out and take her place. Yeah. And the very first time we were about to practice that in rehearsal, she said to the guys, I'm really nervous. Are you nervous? And Nick looked at her, because Nick is 15. He had not grown into those like gangly legs and arms that he had for days. And he looked at her and he goes, no, I'm not nervous. We got you. And then he turned around. I was standing behind him and he mouthed very overdramatically, oh my God, yes, I am. And so they literally, so he was back there and they nailed that throw. There was a couple of close calls. They nailed that throw. He nailed the catch every time. But what stood out to me was that it speaks to who Nick was as a person, and that if you were falling physically or metaphorically, if he was in your presence, he was going to catch you. You know what? It didn't matter. That was Nick at 15, and that was Nick in his 30s, and that was Nick in his 40s. That's my favorite.
Linda, when you think back to your time at HTI with Nick, what stays in your mind the most?
I remember the laughs. I do remember the laughs. He always had the hugest smile, biggest heart. I remember him always hanging out in the girls' dressing room. And then I do remember there were a few times he actually brought his guitar. And I'm not sure which show it was, but I remember distinctly because I actually knew the one song that he was playing. And I was like, this is the one song I can play on guitar. I do remember that. And I was able to show off like 3 chords and I was like, done. But yeah, always very talented and always very tall. He was probably at his mature height at that age. I was probably also at my mature height, but I was a good like 2 feet shorter than him, I think.
Dean, what sticks out in your mind when you think back to those years at HTI?
Well, of course, I only did the one show with Nick. I'm 12 years older than he was. I was kind of the old folk in the cast. I remember, and I took great pride in this past week, because I thought, I am pretty darn sure that Nick was also in the running for the role of Benji Stone in my favorite year. And I said, I beat Nick Cordero for that part. Yeah, no, I remember that he had there was such a dynamic way about him. And even at that age, they had those qualities that you want to have as a performer. And so he caught my attention in auditions because I didn't really know him because I hadn't done those other two shows. But all of a sudden, here's this kid who's 16 years old who I'm battling it out for the part with. And so he's, one to keep your eye on. Just a great personality, a team player, $1 million smile, all those things that you want to have. I feel privileged that I had the opportunity to work with him.
Angela, what sticks in your mind when you think about Nick?
He was such a great kid, and the laughter for sure. I can picture him on the trolley with that grin of his. In Meet Me in St. Louis, Kristen Peace and Nick hung around a lot together too. And then that summer, in between Meet Me in St. Louis and Favorite Year, Nick and Kristen played Evita and Che at Aquarius School. So a bunch of us from St. Louis went to see it together, and he was brilliant. To add to Dean's thing with Favorite Year, he was so talented, and he was so confident about his talent. The je ne sais quoi about Nick was he had that beautiful balance that he was confident without being arrogant. So he wanted to be Benji, or he wanted these leads, and he had the talent for it. He hadn't grown into his height yet. He wasn't arrogant about it. Even at that age, at 15, that's what blew me away about him.
Regina, when you're thinking back to your time at HTI, frolicking around with all of us on stage and backstage, what do you remember the most about Nick?
Most of my memories are more of the rehearsals and the backstage, the fact that he was never in his own dressing room. He really was always, and I kind of joke that I think that that's maybe where his love of showgirls, kind of was born. I mean, he married a showgirl. He was so sweet and so silly, and he had that funny, that great big smile, and he would do just anything for a laugh, but in the most humble way as well. And there was something about him. He had such charisma. Even, 15-year-old boys are usually really awkward and awful, and he was not. You kind of vacillated between wanting to mother him a little bit, because we were older than him, but also kind of date him a little bit. Like, you never really, he just had this something about him that made him kind of irresistible to everybody. You girls know what I'm saying.
We're quite spoiled here in Hamilton because we seem to have this embarrassment of riches when it comes to birthing some pretty solid theater talent that move on to bigger and better things. And we've intersected with a lot of these people through community theater and other programs in Hamilton. When you think about Nick's career and Broadway and Tony's, how does that feel to you as somebody who got to work with him way back when he was a teenager doing community theater in the Hammer?
You know what I love about Nick is that he stayed authentic. Nick never lost who he was at his core, no matter what show he was doing or, where he was living and how many cameras he was in front of. The Nick that you saw there was the same Nick that you saw at, 15, 16, 17. I think that's a credit to the way that he was raised and the fact that you could tell his authenticity when he was young. And I love the fact that he stayed true to his core.
I'm so proud of him, like watching him on TV. I remember, kind of following his career throughout the years. And especially, I'll never forget it, standing in my apartment, watching him on the, at the Macy's Day Parade perform in Bullets Over Broadway. And I was just tears. I couldn't stop. I was like, he's living the dream. It's so amazing. I'm so proud.
I was just so proud. Everything he did. I wanted to see all the shows he was in New York. I got to see Waitress, thankfully. His dad had passed away that week, the same week we were going. We were messaging back and forth, and I remember asking him, are you going to be back in New York? And he said, yeah. And I said, when will you be back on stage? And he was going to be back on stage while we were still there. I couldn't believe it. It was less than a week later. So we did see that. Waiting backstage after for us to show my sisters and I the backstage. That didn't occur to me. I thought we were all waiting with everyone else for him to come out, and we waited. And we're like, oh my gosh. And then from across the street, he's like, Chrissy! He's been waiting to give us a tour. But I didn't assume that. And then he felt bad. He's like, I didn't make it clear. And I'm like, well, I didn't think that was possible. In his mind, that's what he was going to do for us. But, we kept in touch throughout everything. He's always just been really special.
He'd been on Law & Order SVU 2 different times. And then he played that recurring character of Victor Lugo on Blue Bloods for 3 times. Each time I would message him, say I saw it and great job, and he'd message back, say everything. And because he's such a nice guy too, like everyone said, any one of his accomplishments you're proud of, but it wasn't because he was famous. It was because he was such a nice guy. And like Selena said, he was always him.
I wonder if we're the only people who are shocked that he always plays a bad dude. Right? Like, it's so not him, right? But every role, even I saw him in Little Shop of Horrors in Washington. He played the dentist, and he was unbelievable. But you just think back to little Nick, and just so goofy, but he just kept playing all these bad dudes. So I think we're the people who are the most shocked by that.
I just want to give you all a final word about Nick. I'll start with you, Brian. What do you think you're going to miss the most about Nick?
I saw him at Theatre Aquarius last at a tribute for Lou, and I was talking to him, and then I saw he was just sort of laughing. I thought, oh, I know why he's laughing, because he's thinking, this is Brian exactly as he was when I was 15. And he just thought he was having this sort of time travel. We always sort of kept up a little bit anyway on Facebook. It was always good to see what he was doing, because he was out there, living the dream that we all thought we might want to do sometime anyways. It was always great to see him.
Linda, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners about Nick and what you're going to miss the most?
I think we'll all miss seeing someone doing something that they were very happy to be doing, that they love doing. I'm feeling really badly for his wife, obviously, and his son. We got to know him back when. We're just going to miss seeing what he could have done, because, he was just really getting going, I think.
Dean, what are you going to miss the most about Nick?
I mean, I'm learning more about him through hearing you, all of you. He's certainly the type of guy I wish I had known more. I've been really sort of haunted this week. I'm a dad of 4. It's hard. The day that Nick died, my oldest turned 19. The idea of him having such a small child and a wife, and that's so sad. But I'm very pleased that I got to work with him the time that I did.
Angela, what are you going to miss the most about Nick?
I think the sentiments that Linda and Dean all talked about, but yeah, I really feel for his wife Amanda and his son Elvis, because he just turned 1. And, for as proud that we were of Nick's accomplishments on Broadway, I was just as proud or even more happy for him when he found love at that later age and got married and then had a kid. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so wonderful. Because he and Amanda, and they were just so happy. And then I also know his sister-in-law, Annie, because she did shows at HTI and married Nick's brother. And their little daughter is just a couple days younger than Elvis. And to have lost his father, and then Annie lost her dad, and then now Nick, that family, I just grieve for that whole family, their heartbreak. And I admire his wife, Amanda. I wish I knew her in person, because I don't know about you, but I feel like I know her because she shared this whole chronicle of what they've been going through. And I just admire her strength, and man, love her, because I just hope that with her family around her, which I know they are, and Leslie, I know she's surrounded by lots of love, and I'm hoping all that love, just carries them through this.
Christine, did you have any final thoughts you wanted to share?
He was just one of those special people, and I really liked having him in my life. I wanted to be able to see him again. I always thought I would. Oh, I'm going to miss him.
Tina?
Gonna miss his smile, but we're so lucky that we live in the age that we live now, that we still get to see it. We still get to see his talent. And I just think back to that first show, Chess, that I did with him when he was gangly and awkward and he couldn't walk with opposition arms, and then seeing him tap dance on TV and just being blown away by that. We get to keep that. We're so lucky, right? I think we just need to keep singing and dancing wherever we are, doing whatever we are, because that's what he'd want us to do. So.
Selena, is there any final thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners about Nick?
I'm going to miss his music. I think there was just a deep well of talent that he did not even get to show us. I still listen to Live Your Life every single day. I think that he gave us all a gift about living in the moment. I think he did exactly that. Everything that Nick did was passionate. The way he was on stage, the way he cared for his family, the type of father that he was, the type of husband that he was. And I admire that. And I think one of the biggest takeaways from his journey was to remind myself that I need to jump into life just a little bit more. I'm going to miss that passion, because I think the world is not quite as bright without him.
And Regina, I don't want to forget you.
I think the potential that he had to do really wonderful things in the world, and to have been able to go back to Hamilton. And I mean, I could just see him when he's in his mid 50s and 60s, like the Nick Cordero School of the Arts. So I'm just really sad that we're going to miss what could have been.
And I too was on stage with Nick in Meet Me in St. Louis, my favorite year, and Boys from Syracuse with HTI, and chess with the Theatre Aquarius Summer School program. But I got to know him strangely even better later on in life because his parents went to the same church as me. And so I would always get these regular updates on what's going on with Nick. They were just so proud of their kid. And sadly, his father passed away just a couple of years ago. Brian, you told me a beautiful story about his father, Eduardo, watching him during rehearsal at HTI.
The audition for My Favorite Year, for example, we would be up in the green room, and there was a set of windows you could actually see into the hall. But we always kept the drapes drawn. We said, no, you can't look, you can't watch. No, that's not fair to anybody. And then Mr. Cordero, Eduardo, would just sort of sneak over and sort of pull them apart. And you'd say, oh, and then you just eventually gave up because you knew he wasn't doing it to spy on them or to see what was happening. He was looking through those things because he was just sort of in awe or, in wonder that his son was down there doing it. He'd come to pick his son up sometimes, and he'd be up in the green room just sort of watching. It was amazing that he'd just show up and do that.
I do take some complicated comfort in knowing that him and his father, Eduardo, are together again. I'll hold that. Thank you, Tina, Christine, Brian, Selena, Linda, Dean, Angela, and Regina, all for sharing your stories and memories of your time with Nick at Hamilton Theatre Inc. I know that the theater company has changed their marquee to honor and celebrate Nick's life, and as did Theatre Aquarius as well. Nick's feeling the love from the theater community here in Hamilton. So thank you, everybody. And stay safe and keep well, and we're going to all hold Nick in our hearts.
When I was younger, just a bad little kid. My mama noticed the funny things I did, like shooting puppies with a BB gun. I poisoned guppies, and when I was done, I found a pussycat bashed in his head. That's what my mama said. What did she say? She said, my boy, I think someday you'll learn to do magic detectives made. You'll be a dentist. Have a talent for causing things pain. Son, be a dentist. Most of pain to be inhumane. Your temperament's strong for the priesthood, and teaching would suit you still that. Son, be a dentist. You'll be a success. Hey, this girl Selena on the black. I should some of that gas. Oh my God! He's a dentist and he'll never be any good. Who wants that teeth up on my teeth inside? Oh, that hurts! Ah, shut up! Open wide! Here I come! I am your dentist! And I enjoy the career that I picked. I am your dentist! And I get up all the pain I inflict. When I start extracting those molars, you better really scream and though it may cause my patients distress, somewhere in heaven above me, I know that my mama's proud of me. 'Cause I'm a dentist and a success. Say ah. Say ah. Say ah. Now spit.
I'm over the moon. I can't believe it. I watched it on TV with everyone else. 8:15, my eyes shot open, tired though I was, and can't believe it. I was on the phone with my mom seconds later, and she was bawling, and I was trying to hold it in, and not very successful, but it's a dream come true. I'm playing Cheech in Bullets Over Broadway, which is a Woody Allen movie turned into a musical directed by Susan Stroman. I mean, he's just such a master at the form, and I got a chance when the opening night party, he was walking out as I was walking in, and I got a chance to thank him personally for trusting me with the role of Cheech, because I'm an unknown actor especially at the time, and and he was very supportive and complimentary, and I'll never forget that moment in the hallway at the Met. Oh my God, crazy. I adore Susan Stroman. Susan and the girls on our show too are, they've been so supportive, and I don't know, what can I say? It's a tough gig. Somebody's got to do it. Just to be there, is really such an honor and such a celebration of everyone's work, and the work is at such a high level this year that I can't wait.
This is CIOI 101.5 FM. The Hawk is on the air.
You're listening to Center Stage, a celebration of musicals from both the stage and screen on 101.5 FM The Hawk. I'm your host, Lyla Miklos. This special 2-hour edition of the show is in celebration of Hamilton Theatre star Nick Cordero, who passed away from complications due to COVID-19. You just heard him as the dentist in the Kennedy Center's 2018 production of Little Shop of Horrors, followed by a promotional segment he did for the Tony Awards, the year he was nominated for his role in Bullets Over Broadway. Our next conversation is with two people who first got to know and work with Nick Cordero when they were all students together at Westdale Secondary School.
You're listening to Center Stage, a celebration of musicals from both the stage and screen. I'm your host, Lyla Miklos, and we've been speaking with people who knew and worked with Nick in Hamilton's theater community. And on the line with me right now are Daphne Moens, who's calling me from Kitchener-Waterloo, and Aidan Johnson, who's calling me from St. Catharines. Both of them were students at Westdale Secondary School with Nick and did shows with him there. And Daphne also did shows with him with New Faces and Theatre Aquarius. Daphne, I'll start with you. What do you remember the most about your time working with Nick back in the day?
I look at pictures and I can't believe how young we were when we did all these shows together. My most vivid memory of Nick is actually the first time I met him. It was the very first person I met when I had started my first day at Westdale. We were in our first class of the day together, and he walked straight up to me and just looked at me and said, "Hey, you're new. What's your story?" And with a big smile on his face, that just kind of speaks volumes. He is that guy who will go up to the new kid in the class and make them feel good and welcome them and just try to get to know them. That says a lot about who he was as a person. He was always interested in you and what you were up to and genuinely curious about people. That kind of amazing person wanted to make people feel welcome and warm as soon as he met them.
Aidan, what do you remember about your time with Nick at Westdale?
I remember Nick being a genius. In grade 9, we were in a play which was like a mishmash of Broadway songs. There was no plot. There was no talking. It was all singing and all dancing. And Nick sang this big part from Guys and Dolls. And I remember watching Nick and realizing this is it. This is star quality. This is mindful Buddha of the stage. He was powerful, magnetic, beautiful, incredible presence, charisma. Oh, just magic. It breaks my heart that this shining star is not with us anymore. It's just unfair and cruel and a loss to the universe. And I'm sad because he's just too young, 41 years old. He was just reaching his prime, 1 Tony nomination, all the future ahead of him as an artist. And to have that taken away from us is just an unspeakable loss.
Daphne, you went on to become a professional actor, and you'll have an even greater appreciation for where Nick went with his career. How does it feel to have been a part of that?
I am very proud of the people that I grew up with and that we all sort of went on and pursued these careers in a really tough industry. Whenever I would hang out with Nick, meet up in Hamilton, I would just say to him, oh my gosh, you did it. You said you would in high school. And it's true. Again, that's another very vivid memory I have is Nick saying to me, "I'm going to be a star." It wasn't said with any sort of cockiness. It was said with a lot of just truth. He said to me, "It's the only thing I can do, so I'm going to do it. I don't have another choice." And I just always thought that was so powerful because he was really drawn to it and it was happening no matter what. And he went in and created that reality. And he worked hard. I remember
him telling me about the process of getting, his visas and all that to go work in the States. And that's no easy feat. Casey's down there, he's down there, and people can do it, but it's not simple. And I think I'm part of a group of people that I'm sure gets told by their parents, friends, hey, why don't you just go down to Broadway and see what happens there? I think we've all kind of experienced that, and we sort of laugh and go, it's so hard. But Nick was so committed to that dream that he was doing it no matter what. I feel very proud of being a part of that community that all did sort of go out there and do it for real, but especially proud of Nick because I know it wasn't easy and he really just did it.
Aidan, you were once a city councillor for us and now you are the head of legal aid for the Niagara region. Do you understand that sense of drive of having a sense of where you need to go when you were a teenager and going for that goal?
Oh, and just a very quick correction. I'm the executive director of the Niagara Community Legal Clinic, proudly funded by Legal Aid Ontario. And your question is kind of overwhelming in that you're inviting me to think of how I've drawn inspiration from Nick, really. The answer is I would definitely say that from Nick, I drew inspiration. I think I gained a sense of how to command a stage a little bit from Nick. A colleague on city council, when I was on city council, sometimes remarked that politics is show business for ugly people. I am the exception to prove the rule. I am the exception to prove the rule in that I'm very beautiful. But I think what I learned from Nick is really something of stage presence for sure. The idea that it's an intimate exchange at its best. If you are truly communicating with an audience, connecting with an audience, there is an exchange of intimacy. There just is an intimacy. When I listen now, I've been listening throughout the pandemic to Nick's audio recording, Live Your Life, outstanding songs that he has transmuted through his unique alchemy into the highest kind of beauty. I urge anyone listening who hasn't listened to Nick Cordero's Live Your Life to go listen. This is intimacy. I think Nick did teach me some tricks that I carry with me. And how can I put this? He's an inspiration to all of us and always will be. That's why we mourn right now.
Daphne, when you think about Nick, what is it that you're going to miss?
This whole thing has really put me in a place of remembering what it was like to grow up with him and all the good times. There's a lot of us that have reconnected since learning about Nick. I think that what is making all of us very sad right now is remembering our childhoods, growing up with Nick, and we've all really reconnected over this tragedy. We've gone back to our friends from our teenage years and we're sharing these stories, and it makes us so sad because when you remember your childhood, there's a little bit of a sadness that comes over you already, but knowing that our friend, like the one that we hung out with at theater school parties and we sang with and we goofed around with, we would hang out and he would jam on his guitar and all that sort of very innocent, childish kind of fun that we had. That's what makes us sad, right, is the reminiscing and the going back to those good old days. I think that whenever I saw Nick, I was always transported back to that feeling. On top of that, the thing I'll miss most is that when he looked at you, it didn't matter if you were somebody famous or not famous. And I know this sounds a bit cliche, but he made you feel beautiful and important, like you were the center of his universe for that conversation. To have somebody give you that kind of attention when they have this huge career and this huge life outside of you, it really felt special. That was, I think, his gift, is that he could be friends with anybody. He made everybody feel good. Lou was just talking about how it didn't matter how big a career Nick had developed. When he saw you and you were from Hamilton and from his good old days, it was just Nick. There was no pretense. There was no ego. There was nothing attached to it. It was just pure. People don't want to work with somebody, especially in our business, that can be very tough. People don't want to work with somebody who's really talented, but they're a big jerk. They want to work with somebody kind and generous. I think that has been the biggest tragedy to the theater community, is that those people are rare and they're special. And that was Nick, and we lost one. It's a tragedy, and it's completely unfair, and he had so much more work to do in this world and so much more love to give.
Aidan, when you think about Nick, what do you think his legacy is going to be?
I think it is a legacy of love, in that through his artwork, he inspired people to love themselves and love others, which takes a very unique power. And in his personal life, he was a friend. He was, I know, a caring son and dad and husband. He radiated a goodness and That's the legacy that touches so many lives. He could never have known how much and how many. That's his legacy.
Thank you, Daphne and Aidan. Are there any final thoughts you wanted to share with our listeners before I let you go?
It may be tempting to think that we are going over the top, talking about how much we loved Nick because we lost him. I think it's important for people to understand that's not what's happening. He was genuinely this person, and we're not putting him on some sort of a pedestal because of how he passed. We are putting him there because of the human being he was on this earth. I know one of his friends said he got his angel wings back when he left because he was already that. He was already an angel with us, and it's true. I don't know a single person who said they didn't like Nick Cordero. That's a rare feat in this life to have people who couldn't say a bad thing about you. I think it's really important that this is the truth. This is not some sort of, overcompensation for something. This is really who he was. I love him. I'll miss him.
And he worked hard.
He did.
Thank you, Daphne. Thank you, Aidan. I really appreciate you sharing your stories about Nick Cordero with us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lyla.
Daphne, I send you love. Lyla, I send you love. Talk to you another day.
Remember my clean shave back in our old days when we were just kids. I had my sixth string and you had your own thing, though I don't remember what it is. I wrote your love songs and you liked that sad one, so I played it all the time. What was that one line? Something about sunshine. I sang it every night. Where the sun don't shine. No, that can't be it. When the sun won't shine. What was it, baby?
Till the sun don't shine, you will still be mine.
That's right. Man, what a whirlwind. So much is happening, and mostly to me. We've come such a long way, no turning back now, babe. You're my family. Now promise me, till the end of time, these are ties that bind. Sing it, honey.
Till the sun don't shine, you will still be mine.
Mine. Mine.
This is CIOI 101.5 FM. The Hawk is on the air.
You grew up in Canada,
Yeah.
in Ontario, Canada. When did you decide that you wanted to be in the theatre? Do you remember, were you a kid? Was it a teacher? Was it?
Yeah, frankly,
moment?
I think it was when I saw Les Mis in Toronto as a kid.
Who did you want to be?
Well, I don't know. I was about
You were
10.
10. So you were deciding, would you want to be Little Gavroche?
Well, no, I mean, I don't know. It was more about the music and the way that that story was told and the impact it had on me as a young age. I remember clearly leaving the theater and saying to my mother that that's what I wanted to do. And she said, it'll be the hardest thing you ever have to do.
And she was right.
She was right, but behind me the whole way.
This is CIOI 101.5 FM. The Hawk is on the air.
I'm Lyla Miklos, and this is a special 2-hour edition of Center Stage on 101.5 FM The Hawk in celebration of the late Nick Cordero, Broadway star, but more importantly, a dearly loved member of Hamilton's theater arts community. You heard him sing along with Jesse Mueller, You Will Be Mine, from the original Broadway cast recording of Waitress. That was then followed by a short snippet from an interview he did with Imogen Lloyd-Webber on the show One-on-One for the Broadway channel. Throughout this special episode, we have listened to conversations with those who worked with him in Hamilton's theater community. Our next conversation is another with alumni of Theatre Aquarius's summer school program under the leadership of Pauline and Lou Zamprogna.
You're listening to Center Stage, a celebration of musicals from both the stage and screen. I'm your host, Lyla Miklos, on 101.5 The Hawk. And tonight's show is in celebration of Hamilton's Nick Cordero. And we've been talking with many of the different theater communities he's been a part of in Hamilton. And on the line with me right now is Dom Zamprogna from Los Angeles, California. Hello, Dom.
Hey, Lyla.
Matt Stewart, who's calling us from Kelowna, BC. Hello, Matt.
Hey, Lyla.
Dave White, who's calling us from Hamilton, Ontario. Hello, Dave.
Hey, Lyla. How's it going?
It's going okay, thanks, Dave. And Tina Traini, who's calling us from Ottawa, Ontario. Hello, Tina.
Hey, Lyla.
All of us are graduates of the Theatre Aquarius Summer School program, and I feel like I need to throw the baton to Dom first, because this is a program that your mother and father, Pauline and Lou Zamprogna, birthed, and you also were a part of. Dom, talk to us about your experience working with Nick in the Theatre Aquarius Summer School program.
Well, you know, I felt like I had no place in that show. I was like 14 years old, and I was the exact opposite of someone like Nick. Nick's like 6'5", and I was like 4 foot nothing, and he was all like bones and lank, and I was like this short little dude whose voice had barely moved yet, you know. But I just remember Nick being, you know, I remember him more in recent years than I do from back then. I just remember hearing him sing for the first time. I mean, that dude, he had the most incredible voice I've ever heard out of anyone, especially at that age when you don't hear people with that kind of talent in front of you. You know what I mean? Like in your hometown, like just showing up, standing next to you and opening their mouth and basically putting everybody in awe in their talent. And that's just, I mean, that was my first impression of him, was his height and his ability, man, because he was a special guy back then.
Matt, you were in chess with Nick in the Theatre Aquarius Summer School program. What do you remember most about your experiences working with Nick?
That was two things. The very first time I heard him sing, I was like, where is his voice coming from? Because he was just so skinny. I just wanted to always feed him every time we saw him. But one of the things that for me will always stick out is that was the year I came out, and it was a very difficult time for me. I'll never forget, you know, backstage, I don't know how he knew, but something, and he came up and he just gave me this big hug and said, I've got you, brother. You're going to be okay. And that has always stuck with me. Just if I can just add one more thing, when I was going through cancer treatment, it was around this time that I think he got nominated, and they were playing him on the radio. I think the CBC was playing him, and I just remember sitting there at Princess Margaret in Toronto and listening, and I'm like, I can't believe I shared the stage with this guy. Here he is being nominated, and, you know, we're listening to him absolutely crushing it, and that will always stick with me because that was such a wonderful moment during, you know, 2 hard, difficult times in my life. Big thanks to him for being there with me, even if he didn't know it.
Oh, that's beautiful, Matt. Thank you. Dave, what do you remember most about your time with Nick at Theatre Aquarius Summer School? And you were in chess and Evita with him.
Yes, I was. I remember during chess they were blocking the Arbiter song, play the Arbiter in chess, and I just remember watching him and Tina and Stephanie Tice blocking the scene. Wow, these three are moving like one. Like chess was Nick's first year at Theatre Aquarius, and it was mine too, and I was just like, how is this his first year? Because he was so smooth and so good. I thought he had been there for like a couple of years before that, because he just seems to, you know how to do everything, like sing and dance and act, and I was like, wow. And I was just in awe. Easy, he's making everything look, knocking it out of the park.
And you also got to see him play the role of Che, and I think he was only 15 when he played that role. What was that like?
It was just really exciting to watch him work, because he like totally engulfed that part. He was always very down to earth. He never really was like, you know, great, this is awesome. You know, he was always so humble like that. But yeah, he was excellent.
Tina, you had the privilege of working with him at Theatre Aquarius and at HTI. What do you remember the most about your time on stage with Nick?
I'd have to start with being I think I was on his left side.
as an arbiter's assistant in chess. And so literally Stephanie and I spent the entire month of rehearsals and performances standing on either side of Nick. You think about a kid that young, and his role was quite serious, and we did a lot of just standing there and having to look serious, and he never broke. And we tried to get this kid to break while we were standing there in rehearsal, and he would never break. He was so focused on doing the best possible job that he could in everything that he did. And it was part of why I dragged him along to HTI the next time they were looking for.
We have you to thank for why Nick became part of HTI too?
I'm sure there were lots of people who dragged him along, like Dave Dayler and Brenda and those guys, but it's like, oh, you gotta come, man. And just having so much fun in the chorus, you know, in My Favorite Year, in Boys from Syracuse. It takes somebody with a true love for the theater to play second dancing guy on the left and Che Guevara. He would do all of that and would sit in the dressing room and make us laugh for days while we waited to go on. And it was always fun, but he was very serious. It was kind of those two sides of him, just knowing how to make people comfortable around him. I went to see him in New York in 2017, and I thought, this guy's famous. He doesn't care. You know, like, look, I'll go to the stage door and maybe see him. And they were doing a radio show with Chaz that night, and I thought, he's going to be too busy. You know, I kind of got in the cab to go away, and out comes Nick from the stage door, and he's like looking around, and I was like, oh my God, stop the cab. I got out and I went running, and he was like, see you, Traini. And I was like, oh my God. And it was it was amazing. My boyfriend was with me, and he's like, you really do know him. And I was like, I think it's really the other way around, that he cared so much about everybody. You look at all these famous friends that he has, and then he came running to me and wanted to go for a drink, and I thought that was just lovely.
Dom, you said that you kept in touch with him over the years. You know him more in his adult life than when you were kids. Can you talk to us a little bit about your more recent memories of Nick and your time together with him?
Well, we kept in touch over the years. We always just kept checking in with each other. But yeah, for some reason, I think, you know, when you hang out with people at impressionable ages, you keep in touch with them, you know? And so, what was it, in 2014 especially? Well, first of all, he came and sang at my mom's celebration of life.
Yeah.
In Hamilton, which was amazing, you know, like, when my dad's like, oh, we should reach out to Nick, I was like, yeah, he's pretty busy, you know, and he, like, without like skipping a beat, he was like, I'll be there. He kept coming in and out of our lives, you know, my family's life. And I remember he came back to us afterwards, and, you know, he's like, I better take off, I gotta, like, fly back to New York. And so I walked him downstairs, and we talked for about almost an hour on the front porch, just about where he was and where I was, and I was on the soap, and he was doing Bullets Over Broadway. And he's like, I want to get to LA. I'm like, it's funny you say that. I want to get to New York. And he's like, yeah, the grass is always sort of greener, sort of thing. And we're like, okay, let's keep it to this. And I get nominated for an Emmy. And like literally the same day or the day after, the day before, I forget, he gets nominated for his first Tony Award. So we texted each other about that. And then there's just been so many instances over the years where randomly he'll just reach out and be like, hey man, keep moving, keep doing stuff. The ceiling's constantly rising, you know, and I'm like, man, you're right. Because this business is tough, you know, you get down, and someone like Nick, for some reason, if he didn't show it, man. I mean, I'm sure he had, you know, moments, but man, that guy was resilient and positive, and every time we texted, it was like, keep moving, keep going, and I'd be like, yeah, of course. And he'd be like, I'm just recording new songs. I'm like, amazing. Of course you are. You can't live life like this, but you regret. You know, when my mom died, I regretted not being home more. Something like this tragedy happens to someone, such a great human being. And my dad was here in September, and he's like, is Nick here yet? And I said, I think so, but I haven't heard yet. So I said, I'll text him. And somehow I got distracted, and I didn't text him until like January, because life is just ridiculous. And I'm like, dude, where are you? And he's like, I'm here. I'm like, let's hang out. He's like, yes, let's do that. I've been meaning to text you. He's like, I'll hit you up. I'm like, great. And the next thing I hear is he's in the hospital. It's just weird how, I don't know, life is weird, and you never know what's going to happen. And hug everyone, you know, and tell people you love them, because you never freaking know.
Matt, if you were to share with our listeners what you're going to miss most about Nick, what would it be?
One thing about being backstage, you know, we all get really close to each other, and he was really great for giving hugs backstage, so that's something I'm definitely going to miss.
Dave, what are you going to miss the most?
There was just so much about him that was good and great, and I'm not just talking talent, but he was just like an all-around good person. He liked everybody. He listened to whatever anybody had to say. Like, he didn't just phone it in as a friend or anything like that. He actually cared about everyone, like just, making sure that everyone felt like they mattered. That's what I always took away from my experiences with Nick and watching him, is that if he was interacting with somebody, he was always truly present. And I think that's what makes a really great human being, is that if you truly care about the person that you're spending even 5 minutes with and making your time with them mean something and make it special, that's what I'm going to miss about him. And I believe Dom said it perfectly, is that you got to tell the people that mean stuff to you how much they do actually mean to you. Even if it's been 10 years, 15 years, if somebody had an impact on what you've done or what you've become, you should always let them know that. I wish I had told Nick that more, because he was always a great inspiration to me.
Tina, what you're going to miss the most about Nick?
Well, I have to second the hugs, because when you're that tall, your arms wrap all the way around somebody small like me. And just his grin, and it's amazing. You see the videos of his son Elvis, and you can see him, and you can see his father in this baby, and just the grin. It's that smile, and we got to remember that when we're having, we're working at something that we care about. You just remember that smile and use it, like Don said, just work, just keep working and keep doing things and remember that.
I tuned into Zach Braff's podcast just after Nick passed away, and I don't know how he got through that podcast, but he shared many of his memories of Nick, and especially the very painful ones near the end. His big message to everybody was, take this pandemic seriously. This disease is indiscriminate. It doesn't matter if you are the dearest, kindest soul. Take it seriously. Wear a mask, social distance, all of that. Remember Nick when you're doing those things.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a big message for people down here. I mean, the States is kind of exploding right now, and there's still people who don't, frankly, give a shit about this thing, and it's people who haven't been touched by this thing, people who don't know anybody. Like, there's people out there who are like, I come in contact with thousands of people, and I don't know one person. I'm like, well, that's good for you. That's great. Unfortunately, I know a friend who's passed away now. I had another friend who's gotten it. I know maybe 10 people who have gotten this thing.
The whole attitude of, it won't happen to anyone that I know or to me, I think that's not the attitude you have to have. You have to think about beyond your own little circle, because it can happen to you. It can happen to somebody that's close to you and that you've formed relationships and have a strong bond with.
Nick became kind of the face of this thing for everyone that knew him.
I just really have a great deal of respect for Amanda for being as strong as she was through this unbelievably terrifying time, and just watching all this stuff happen to Nick. It was just mind-boggling to see that she was still smiling every day.
Amanda's been a superhero through all this. So I want to say thank you to Dom Zamprogna, Matt Stewart, Dave White, and Tina Traini for joining me on this call. Unfortunately, Dom's cell phone dropped out partway through this interview. Matt and Dave and Tina, any final word for our listeners before I let you all go?
Big hugs to Amanda for really being a true champion during this pandemic. The way that she stayed strong. For so many of us, like myself, who's going through, I have curable terminal cancer, and this pandemic has been really hard, and I have to say her Instagram posts every day have been a real great beacon of inspiration for me. So big kudos to her and big hugs. And it's just been so difficult to watch over the past couple of days as she's dealing now with her grief. And I just wish her and Elvis and their family all the best.
Thanks, Matt. Dave?
In the vein of what we've been talking about, I just wanted to say to everybody that went to theater school and knew Nick and knew me and knew Lyla and Matt and Tina and Dom, I miss all you guys, and I hope that maybe something like this, even though it's super sad, but maybe a good sort of wake-up call to reconnect, talk to people you haven't seen or heard from in a long time. You never know when you'll never get that opportunity to do so again. We wish that we weren't having this pandemic right now, because I think a celebration of Nick's life would be great, to have everybody actually physically together to be able to just celebrate him. Fortunately, we can't do that right now. People always say don't live in the past, but you also shouldn't forget the past. So I hope you're all doing great, and I miss you all a lot.
Big hugs.
Thanks, Matt.
Tina, any final thoughts about Nick that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I think he taught us to sing. We can't hug, so let's just all sing, no matter what you think your voice sounds like. Just make some songs and make some music and Just keep singing.
And live your life, as you would say.
And even though he's not on the call right now, thank you, Dom. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Dave. And thank you, Tina, so much for sharing your stories and memories with Nick. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure our listeners do too. I hope you all stay safe and keep well.
Thank you, Lyla, for having us on.
Thanks, Lyla.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Big cheers, Lyla. Good to hear from everybody.
Yeah.
My pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
This world's gone crazy, I might have too. It's changing, so why do I keep starting over? If I live my truth, I'm living just for you. Breathless, I'm racing for the finish line. I've been running high, I've been running low, I've been running. I've been running high, I've been running low, I've been running from, oh, I don't know. Turn on the news and cry, why should I care? There's nothing to give me hope, yet I keep going. Do I laugh it off, or do I face the truth? Breathless, I'm further from the finish line. I've been running high, I've been running low, I've been running. I've been running high, I've been running low, I've been running from, oh, I don't know. I've been running, I can't keep running. I've been running high, I've been running low, I've been running. I've been running high, I've been running low, I've been running. I've been running real high, I've been running real low, I've been running and running and running. I've been running high, I've been running low, I've been running from you. Running from you.
This is The Hawk, 101.5 FM, online at 1015thehawk.ca.
You are listening to Center Stage, a celebration of musicals from both the stage and screen, on 101.5 FM The Hawk, with your host, Lyla Miklos. If you want to stay up to date with the show, you can always join the Center Stage with Lyla Miklos on 101.5 FM The Hawk Facebook fan page, or follow me on Twitter at Lyla Miklos. That's at LYLAMIKLOS. Or follow me on Instagram at @thereal_Lyla Miklos. This special edition 2-hour episode is dedicated to the late Nick Cordero, a beloved star of Hamilton's theater arts community. We just heard him sing Running from the musical Mary and Max. Next, we will hear him sing from a concert he gave at 54 Below in New York City. Here's Nick Cordero with What a Wonderful World.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom
What a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white. The bright, blessed day, the dark, sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. What a wonderful world. What a wonderful world.
This is CIOI 101.5 FM. The Hawk is on the air.
Charlie Hollin said a word. When she did, I hardly heard. That all changed one night. Told me she gonna show me good. Take her ass to Hollywood where the bright lights go by. Said screw the left and screw the right and burn straight ahead tonight. Oh, watch me shine. I stood all night there on the curb, hearing voices Charlie heard in my mind. They said, why deny such a good thing? It's gonna pass you by. Don't you run and hide now. Every time the moment is right, 'cause you're never gonna see it again. Maybe a lucky man, the world in your hands, but you're never gonna see this again. No. Oh, you keep gone in style. Oh, Chevy with the top down, and damn, did she drive it like a foolish child. Tearing down the interstate, drove the bright lights of LA. Oh, watch them shine. I looked up to the stars above, think it's time I let some love in my life. And she said, why? Tonight's such a good thing, it's gonna pass you by. Don't you run and hide now. Every time the moment is right, 'cause you're never gonna see it again. Make me a lucky man, the world in your hand, but you're never gonna see this again, no. Oh, look, here comes the sunrise. How am I ever gonna tell somebody I lost my way? I can't think of a more petrifying thing to say. Right now, looking at that red horizon, girl, I'm telling you, ain't nothing this white-eyed man won't do. And they say, why? Tonight's such a good thing, it's gonna pass you by. Don't you run and hide now. Every time the moment is right, 'cause you're never gonna see it again. Maybe a lucky man, the world in your hand, but you're never gonna see this again. Maybe a lucky man, the world in your hand, but you're never gonna see this again. Oh, look, here comes the sunrise.
You're listening to The Hawk, 101.5 FM in Hamilton, Ontario.
I'm Lyla Miklos, and you are listening to a special 2-hour edition of Center Stage on 101.5 FM The Hawk in celebration of Hamilton's Broadway theater star, Nick Cordero. We just heard one of his original songs, The Moment Is Right, in the last conversation with theater artists from Hamilton who knew and worked with Nick Cordero. His friend Dominic Zamprogna was unfortunately cut off at the end of the call due to some cell phone reception issues at his home in Los Angeles. So I called him back, and I'm glad I did. He's got to have the final word about Nick Cordero as we close off this special episode that, of course, must end with Nick's anthem, Live Your Life. A motto you can see that Nick Cordero truly lived as we have listened to the many wonderful stories from all his friends. A big, huge thank you to Aidan Johnson, Amanda Zamprogna, Angela Burley, Brian Gedcke, C.A. Smith, Carrie Beale, Christine Bering, Daphne Moens, David Dayler, Dave Shuttleworth, Dave White, Dean Hollin, Dominic Zamprogna, Dwayne Gordon, Kathy Zaborsky, Kelly Lovatt, Linda Yamamoto, Matthew Stewart, Regina Darling, Sara Mintz, Selena Jones, and Tina Traini for coming together and sharing their memories of Nick Cordero. Listeners, stay safe, keep well, socially distance, and wear a mask. It's the least we can do to honor Nick's memory.
I wanted to make sure Dom had a moment here to share some final thoughts about Nick with our listeners.
My mom passed away, and her symptoms were very similar to what put Nick in the hospital. And ultimately, she didn't make it either. You know, when people go into a hospital and get put on breathing tubes, you just don't really know anything. You don't realize how many things can go wrong, and very similar things went wrong with Nick as did with my mother. So unfortunately, my experience, it was just all too hauntingly familiar. We were all really trying to stay super positive, but you have this thing in the back of your mind saying, he's not out of the woods. Still had this whole hope every day. I'd meditate and think about Nick And every night before bed, you'd think about Nick. And every morning I woke up, my daughter would come and ask me about Nick. And my sisters and I would text each other all throughout the day. Whenever we spoke, it'd be all about everything going on. And then, how's Nick? 95 days of him being on everybody's mind. And then when it ended, it was just so heartbreaking because he lost that tough battle. And I guess bad things happen to good people, you know what I mean? And he was one of the best. You kind of come away from these things thinking life isn't fair, and it isn't. Bad things happen to good people, like my mom and like Nick Cordero, two of maybe the greatest people I've ever known. But I think people who didn't know Nick should know that someone once said, like, great actors, people with great presence can take up a doorway. And it wasn't just because you're a size, you're a big guy like Nick was. Like, short people can take up a doorway too, but Nick did it figuratively and literally speaking. Just his personality and his charisma and his charm and his smile, his ability to make everyone feel like you're the only person in the room. When people can do that, it's so rare and so important in life. So you had a guy who was immensely talented, an amazing presence and charisma, who was a hell of a nice dude, who had a family. And that's what I think we should all be thinking about: his beautiful wife, his beautiful son, his sister Amanda, his brother Matt, his mom Leslie. Like, imagine the pain they're going through right now, and we all feel as touched as we do. Imagine how they're feeling. That brings me to tears, usually just thinking about them. What a life he had. He lived more than most people, I think, in 41 years than people do in double that time, accomplished more, and affected more. Maybe I'll leave it at that.
I think that's beautiful. Thank you, Dom. I'm glad I called you back.
Well, I'm glad you did too. But, you know, he's up there with his dad now, which is awesome.
Yeah, that was my one little bit of comfort there. I know Eduardo's got you with him right now, and you're looking after each other, and maybe you're having a jam session together.
Jam sessions, man. I mean, I remember there was a year his parents went away, and we'd all go to his house. It was during theater school, and we were all over there, like, all the time, just hanging out, playing music. Those are the things you remember about those great theater school days when everyone's kind of young and just trying to figure it out. You know, it was good talking to you too, Lyla. Like, I appreciate that you're reaching out to everybody and putting things together, and I appreciate you, just so you know.
Oh, touche, my friend, touche.
And I loved you reminiscing about falling in the orchestra pit, too. I wasn't going to bring it up, but you brought it up the other day.
It's my claim to fame, Dom. I guess the important thing is, and Amanda's kind of proved that with everything she's been posting about family, and your family's a huge example of what's really important in life. That's the solid, right? So thank you. Thank you so much.
We'll see you back up in the Hammer.
That would be lovely.
This hurts like hell, but it feels right. Far as I can tell, you made your mind. I wish you well, but won't be on the other side. Biting
broadcasting across the Steel City. This is 101.5 The Hawk.